Hello and welcome to another episode on the Cultivated channel. We've been away for a while, so bear with us. I'm going to make a little adjustment. Today we're going to talk about yes versus no. I think we all struggle with this, and we've probably heard it before. You should say yes more often, then you have more opportunity. And other people like me tell you to say no more often because you need space so that you can reflect, so you can take inventory, so you can figure out your goals, you can figure out where you're at and where you want to be, and to appreciate things, to be in the moment. So the question is, which is better? And today we're going to be discussing that. Juliet's going to be taking on the view of yes, and I'll be taking on the view of no. Now, to make it interesting, as always, we're going to try to argue is always, right? So always saying no. Now that I say it, it sounds kind of ridiculous. And always saying yes. And so we'll probably end up somewhere in the middle, which is always really interesting. How far we go into yes or no in this instance. So I'll start it off in reference to no. Like I said, I think no is really important. To be honest, in an ideal world, I think we could all be monks. I know it sounds crazy, but I think deep down, we all could do it. And I think we'd all be happy doing it. If once we learn to let go of all this stuff, that's social, the cultural, the family, the everything in reference to what you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to be, and all these supposed to's. When you say no to everything, it allows you just to be you and to be in your own mind. And I know that sounds lazy and it sounds maybe torturous to some people. It did to me because what are you going to do? Nothing. But it's actually really hard. It's really hard to be in your mind and be okay with you and just sit there with it. And so I think that if we could do that, we could really be in our own minds. And I think people who say they can't are either scared or have never tried, because it is scary. It is difficult to be in your mind, to be there and just accept that. Ideally embrace that, right? And I think that takes time and space to be able to get to a point where I'm me, I'm unique, I'm amazing, and I don't need to do anything. I don't need to prove it to anybody. But I think you need that space, and you need to say no. And when you say no to a lot of stuff, it just gives you more time to appreciate everything. Because even when you say no, you can still appreciate the sunset, right? You can still appreciate the sunrise. You can still appreciate a garden. You can still appreciate so many things in the world. Children playing, you don't have to play with them. You can see your family playing. You can see other people working. That sounds lazy. But my point being, though, is you can take so much pleasure in just being in the moment and being satisfied with who you are and where you are. That'd be my pitch. And of course, it's ridiculous, the whole only saying no. But I think it's worth. I don't think it'd be so bad. I think it'd actually be good. What do you think?
I see the value of having that space, and yes is really important, especially if you're coming from a place of trying new things. Or a place of kind of being afraid to get out of comfort zone. I think we all have different areas in life, including me, where it is uncomfortable, and then saying yes is the hardest choice, right? And not in the kind of people-pleasing space or the kind of busy, always busy space. Not so much say yes to everything, but say yes especially to those things that it's going to be difficult and a challenge and potentially a really good learning experience.
But remember, you're saying yes to everything. That's the argument.
But this is a ridiculous.
To begin. I did it, so you should try too.
But I think yes lets you have so many different opportunities to learn, because you're trying things, right? I think oftentimes we talk about, well, just try, just do something. So you can say, yes, I'm going to try that. Yes, I'm going to do this. Let's say even some kind of social engagement that you wouldn't normally do. So, okay, yes, let me try something different. Yes, let me go to that improv comedy workshop, right? It's really out of my comfort zone. And then there you have everything is yes and, right?
Oh,
and that
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of spirit, right? Everything is yes and, because anything goes, and you, as part of the, even if you're just sort of playing around, practicing, learning, not necessarily performing. It's the, yes, I take your idea and we can run with it. It doesn't have to continue exactly in that vein if it's not comfortable for you, but you can't just say, oh, no, we're not in outer space, we're not astronauts. You can't stop it there. So I think in that spirit, it's kind of yes and. So, yes, it can be always yes, and I may be able to do that later. Yes, I'd love to. My schedule's busy this week and maybe next week, right? So a way to be able to always say yes, and maybe that's working around what we're supposed to be doing of always yes, but it's a different approach to thinking about yes all the time.
I think it works. I mean, kudos to you. I think that adding to it is not out of the question, and I think that if you do yes, and I mean, thinking about it right now, I think when you look at it, what we're saying is the exact opposite of letting life make your decisions in yes or no. Because I'm actively saying no, and you're actively saying yes to things. And I think you add that extra, modifier, because it is yes and. You don't just say yes to, like, I don't know, doing something you don't want to do all the time. You say yes because you know it's going to make you grow. You say yes because it's being a good son. You say yes because it's being a good father. You say yes because it's being a good friend. You say yes because of many different good reasons. But you do it your way, right? You don't sit there, like being a father, you don't sit there and be someone's punching bag. You're there and you parent. And that is, yes, I'm here. Yes, I'll support you, but I'm going to do it this way, my way, so that I can, at the same time, not deplete myself, but I can still help you, and I can do it in a way that, and I think this is the morality point of it, where you sleep well at night. You're like, I did my best. And even if the kid is the spawn, well, I won't go so far, but even if everything goes wrong, you're like, I did my best, right? And there's some comfort to that. And so I think that's a really good way of putting the yes and. But like I said, I think it's really important to highlight that what we're talking about here is the decision, the empowerment, the intentionality of that. And it's really also, what I like about it is going into the moment. Right? We're present. We're not thinking, oh, last time, blah, 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 or this. You're yes, and then you're there. You're no, and then you're there. And the no is a little tricky because most people think, well, you just said no to somehow you're there. But then you're present in that moment still. And you have that time and space to reflect, to appreciate, to just be present in that moment. And I think that's really important, beautiful, and the underlying foundation of both of these things is that yes and no. That being said, I don't know. I think that it really depends on where you're at. And I've been thinking about this, right, in reference to the channel, because we're kind of go, well, what's the general people, and what do people suffer with the most? And we try to say, oh, if you're most people, then you should say yes to most things, because most people don't do that. But I think that I was thinking about it over the break, and I think that this channel, for me, inadvertently, which is good, has really been focused on people who are really successful. And I mean that in however you define it, really, because the success in reference to money, power, title, and there's also success in reference to all the other things you can define it as. But it's success where you find that something's missing, right? You're successful, maybe to society, to your family, to your friends, even to yourself, right? If you, like, for example, you value money and you get there, and then you're like, something's missing still, right? And that being said, I would say no is probably my recommendation for those people.
And I think, generally our world is very much about doing, right? As opposed to being, like, in the moment, enjoying it. It's very much doing focused. And if you're constantly, I think about my calendar, right? If it's back to back, right? Oh, I can put another one here and another one here, just visually the blocks of time. Then there isn't space for reflecting, right? There isn't that space for, maybe I'm in the moment in those events, but then there's always oh, okay, I have one. All right, how am I going to get here to there? I got to go now, got to go. And it's good to be in control of the time, right? Managing time. But I think oftentimes we say, okay, the harder choice or the harder thing is probably the one where you'll learn more, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
the choice
Mm-hmm.
you should make. And oftentimes the harder in this world is no. So I think you can't say no to everything. So this is sort of a false like versus.
I mean, you could,
but
but
you
it would.
could. It's
It would
very
be,
difficult.
yes.
I don't think we would recommend
No,
saying
no,
no
of
to
course not.
everything. But I think it's what you do say yes to and what you do say no to. And like being able to find a balance that works. And also for me too, accepting when that balance changes, right?
Yeah.
I recently heard, I don't remember where it was, but it's, you can say yes, you can do all these things. You can try all these things, just not all at the same time. So when you say yes, and it's yes, I do want to try that, and maybe it'll be next year. Maybe it's something that goes on the maybe list, and then you revisit that when you have some time to reflect, right? And so it can be. It doesn't have to be no never. I think this is also part about it. It's not no never or yes always, right? You can have these nuances of yes, I like that idea. Yes, I want to spend time with you, and I'm not going to squeeze it in because then I won't be there. I want to do it in 2 weeks when I have a free calendar and I can really be present in the moment with you. This kind of yes and or no maybe.
That's interesting. I would actually argue, and hearing you talk, I think it's a good way to pivot into something that, or not pivot, but goes parallel to this, in reference to, I would say that in my experience and opinion, and this is based on no studies at all, right? But the maybe is just awful. I don't like the maybe, and I'm happy throwing it out, right? I'm not saying like ignore it, because we can't ignore the maybe. Write it down and then put it in a drawer. But I've never gone back to things I put on the maybe. It's a way to help us accept putting it out the door. But I would say that what I'd recommend here is never maybe. Ideally, right? I know it's impossible to never say maybe, but that being said, you should always strive in that moment, yes or no.
To make that decision.
To make that decision, because it you drag it on, it just weighs you down, and things are already hard, right? Like, okay, I'm going to do my own taxes, right? But or I'm going to, do something, right? It's already going to be hard, right? So why are you going to just put it off? Just say, yeah, I'm going to do my own taxes. Or, no, I'm going to pay somebody to do it because I'm lazy, because they're too difficult, because of whatever, right? And then you move forward, because you got to figure out who you're going to hire, how much are you willing to pay for it, or if you're doing them, when the hell are you going to do it? How many days can you dedicate to reading international tax law or whatever the heck you're trying to do, right? And then you got to sit there and put the hours in, and then, put in the numbers, work the numbers, figure out different things, do research, talk to people, do all this stuff, right? So it's already hard. Life is hard. So just make a decision and move forward. And the great thing about life is you could change your mind in the next moment, right? You could say yes, and then you start it, and then you realize, I was naive, foolish, whatever you want to call it, but there's no way I can do my own taxes, right? There's just so much stuff, potentially, right? And then you say, okay, I'm going to hire somebody. And then you go down that route. Life isn't set in stone, typically, right? There's certain things that are, but for the most part, you can change. But even things that you can't change, I would say you're happier if you just make a decision and move on. So I like this. I would say that, yes and no is important, but choosing one or the other is even more important than not, because that lets life decide for you. And that makes it, and even if you can decide and life doesn't, it drains us slowly. And we don't notice it, but the more maybes you got pending in the back of your head, the more tired you're going to be, the harder it's going to be to sleep, the more difficult it's going to be present and enjoy those good times with your family, with your friends, with that hobby you like, with all those things, because you got them pending, you're carrying them all around, and it's awful, right? So just decide ideally, unless there's a deadline. But even then, if just tell yourself, hey, when the time comes, I'm going to say yes or no, and even that, I think, would help us to be better present in the moment.
I think it's a very difficult thing for many people to do, right? Because there's an appeal to the maybe, because it leaves it, I can think about it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying I want to weigh my options, right? But the deadline part is really important for many, me included. Like having a deadline to have to make a decision to then take the next action is important because I like to have all the options. I want to do all the things. And if it's a maybe, then I'm still considering it, right? And it takes space and it takes energy because I'll be thinking about it or I'll come back to thinking about it. So I think it's a practice, right? There's some element of discipline to what you're saying to be able to say, okay, I am going to make a decision. And then also, if you make that decision and you believe your decision, you could say, oh, I don't like it. And then it gives you some feedback, right? Some, I don't know if you want to call it gut feeling or like, oh, what do I really want that maybe isn't what it is. And I think there's a little bit of tension there between like time to reflect on it and actually making the decision, because you have to find that balance that works. And that's something individual and also context dependent. Because too much time may not be a great thing because then you're sort of in the struggle of making a decision, but you do need a bit more time. So for me, it's also like setting some internal deadlines, but also finding some mechanism for accountability. Right? Okay, I'm going to talk about this decision with a partner. I'm going to talk about this decision tonight or tomorrow so that it doesn't stretch on forever. Or I'm going to make it. Today I have to make it and I make it and then move forward. But it's a constant practice because I like to have all the options open and I end up with very long maybe lists that are heavy to carry.
I think we talked about this too, that the maybe lists allow it to still be perfect. And so if you never decide, then everything potentially could still be perfect. And so that's an issue that perfectionists deal with, which tend to be very successful people as well. That being said, I think that so be clear, I'm not saying just make a decision like that, right? I'm not saying flip a coin, screw life, right? Like, no. I'm saying if the decision is superficial, then yeah, flip a coin. Who cares, right? But if it actually, is important, then dedicate the time. But at the same time, say, don't leave it there. Don't be like, oh, I got to decide if I'm going to go to business school. And just be like, and every time you think about it, oh, I really have to make a decision. No, say, you know what? Schedule it, right? And that's, not just discipline, but I think, like we talked about, time management, using time as a tool, but saying, hey, I'm going to make a decision by this day. And the great thing is when that day comes, you're just like, wow, there's so much information. I had no idea. So you give yourself a little more extra time before the deadline arrives, not when the deadline is. Because if you do that, you're just... it's not healthy, okay? But if you, ideally, I would say halfway points, right? If you give yourself 2 weeks, and at the 1 week mark, you're like, holy moly, there's just so much info. I'm going to give myself an extra week. That's perfectly fine. Now when the deadline arrives, you got to make a decision, and you're like, oh, just give myself extra time. Don't do that, because you're just running away from it,
then
right?
You can't trust your deadlines.
Exactly. And you're not, and like I said, it's really about honesty with yourself, right? If you know you give yourself a week, and you're not going to do anything anyways, don't do that. Give yourself a day if you know that's what you need, and be honest with it. And like I said, it's not about what you want to take time. It's not about how you want to make decisions. It's about how you make decisions. And you got to embrace that. Again, you are successful. You are amazing. So just embrace. Maybe it takes you a week to make a decision, and that's okay, right? Maybe it takes you, 2 minutes, and that's great. But everybody's different. And clearly, you can succeed in many different ways and be, reaching your goals. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. Just be honest with yourself and then make sure that you actually execute, right? And I think that's what you're saying, which is extremely important about knowing yourself and giving yourself the appropriate amount of time or the deadline or using others to get you there, right? They're going to call you, hey, did you do that thing you're going to do?
Right.
That helps, right? And then you do it. And I think that's extremely important. But again, I think it goes to this theme of like, it's on you. It's about you being honest with yourself, and it's about you getting to that yes or no and not leaving it as a maybe. So in some ways, I think this video has become lessen the amount of time that you are in maybe. I do understand there's maybes out there, but you want to lessen that as much as possible, and ideally make everything a decision based. And I understand that comes with money and empowerment and all these different aspects that we're not born into. But there can be decisions in our life that can get us slowly out of those places and give us more empowerment so that we can say yes or no to certain things. So if you are in that state, then there's other watch different videos. But we're talking about yes or no when you have that power to do it, and I think it's an important little asterisk down there that you're capable of saying yes or no. I'm not trying to talk, and again, I think this is really important also. I'm not talking to people who don't have the power to make decisions. I'm talking to people who are successful, who are, smart, money, whatever it is, and you have the choice to say yes or no. So lessen the time you say maybe, and you will be happier. You will have more space to do more things you love. You will be better at doing those things. And so, like I said, I think the homework would be try saying no. I think trying saying no is one of those things, and don't fill the space, because that's what happens. You say no, and you're like, sweet, I can put
a blank slot in the
yeah,
calendar.
I can put something up.
Empty, fill me.
And again, don't leave it blank though. Put it as planning, because some people don't like reflection or space or whatever it is, right? Just put it as strategy. I love that one. Just put strategy.
Right.
I mean,
I was gonna say don't be strategic.
That's killer right there. I mean, you imagine you look at someone's calendar and it says strategy time or strategy building or something of that nature. You'd be like, wow, that guy's a badass, or that woman is incredible. She plans like how to kill it, right? Like that's pretty cool. And that's what we want, right? Imagine you saw that in someone's calendar where it was like strategy building or, long-term strategy, big picture strategy. You're like, you want that person in your team. You want to work for that person. That's what we want. So you don't have to leave it out there as blank. You can put strategy or something else that you find acceptable, but then sit there and actually think about your life and where you want to be and what you've done well, what you have. You can look in the past. You can look in the future. You can look at the present. You can just look at yourself and just accept that. All those things are extremely powerful. But will help you being able to say yes or no to the next thing that comes. Thoughts?
Yes, it comes with the no part, but I think is important, especially if you're saying practice saying no, but that no can be a full sentence, right? It can just be no.
Yes.
Because I think often for women, but especially for people who aren't used to saying no, there's this feeling that I have to justify my no, right? Oh, I'm so sorry, or whatever it is. And it's not that it comes from a bad place per se, because you want to be polite, you want to, explain, don't want people to feel bad, but it's also okay to just say no. And that's the end of it. It's just no. I mean, of course, it's context dependent, but that's something that is really hard and takes practice to do.
I think that's really important. I think that's a great little, extra there. Is you don't need to explain yourself. You can say yes, you can say no, and you don't need to explain yourself. They're like emotions. I think so many times we try to validate them or justify them, and you don't need to do that. And again, like you said, it's dependent. If your child's asking you,
right, it's nice to
can I have a cup of water? You're just like, no. I mean, whatever gets the ball rolling on no, right? They're not gonna die of thirst, but whatever. I mean, baby steps, right? I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying like in that situation, I think an explanation would be like, hey, I'm having a conversation right now. I'll get you your cup of water after, right? And that is healthy. Right. You can't just be like, oh, you're the center of the world all the time, because there's negative things that will come with that. And so, for most of the time, try just saying no and leaving it at that. I would say that's a good homework. I would say go out there and when you have an opportunity, when someone asks you for something, and again, you can dial it back in reference to like, hey, I have something to do. Just no, I don't want to do it, and that's that. If you want to take it a step further and like go for the icing on the cake, when somebody asks you for something, try today to just say no and no explanation. And say, and you can be nice about it. You can be like, no, unfortunately, that's not going to work.
Right.
And try that. And I think it's going to be really empowering, and it's going to be really nice. And hopefully it'll start a snowball effect where you start saying no again. I think it has like a negative connotation. You let somebody down. You're amazing, so you should be able to do everything, or you should be everywhere all at the same time. And no, nobody can do that. Not even Superman can do that, right? Like it doesn't matter speed of light, speed of sound. He can't be everywhere at the same time. So you definitely can't do that. And you'll be happier if you're not, right? So there. Yes and no, I would say for our audience, say no. And as homework, try saying no and leaving it at that and see how it feels. and comment below how it went, and if it went badly, then we can talk about that too. Because there are ways that it could go bad. Like your boss tells you, "Hey, Juliet, I need this, blah blah blah, buy this." No, and then and that could cause problems.
Right.
Why? I said no. But that aside, it's we be logical, right? Everyone here is very smart, so do it, with logic, with sanity, as a basis, and say no, and feel empowered, and then just leave that space as strategy, and see, and come back to us and tell us how that went. Anything else you want to add?
No.
I think that was good. I think that going from yes to no, clearly it was a crazy notion. But again, I would say that if you do have to pick one for our audience, I would say pick no. And ideally set a time limit, right? If you really want to play that crazy game today, I'm just going to set it on everything. But you know what? I would say that would be really interesting because it shows you how much power you have. It shows you that you could do it. And I think that sometimes it depends on the individual. Some people, slow and steady. Some people just dive right into the deep end, right? So if you're that type, maybe try that. Maybe try it for an hour. Try it for however long you think that you need to believe in yourself, that saying no is not the end of the world, that saying no is a good thing, and then see how it goes. And it could be also like an experiment to be like, hey, with this type of thing, it is good to say no. With this other type of thing, not so much, and so on and so forth. But like I said, homework, say no to something and leave it at that, and comment below on how it went. Good luck. And until next time, stay open, stay curious, and stay true to you. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please put them below. Or if you have any suggestions on what the next video should be, comment below as well. If you want more information, please check out the website or check out the book. It's on Amazon, The Selfish Guide. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Take care.